Welcome for, thank you for coming. This session, I don't know where I need to stay. So, Taming RF unicorns and other fantastic beasts. So, this session is going to be pretty light, judging by the title. We don't want anything heavy. It's not going to be too terribly technical, but it may be fun, and it might actually be a little bit informative. So I like to keep things informal. It's a small group, which is nice. So we'll take breaks for questions, and so I'll put some pauses in there. Kind of the agenda, we're going to talk about some stuff. We're going to have some questions, maybe. We're going to do some stuff, and I've got some people helping me do stuff. Your Wi-Fi may magically, mysteriously, kind of not work for a little bit, but not anything that would violate FCC, if the FCC is watching. And then we're going to show some stuff that might be interesting, and then maybe some questions about stuff. So, does that sound good? Yes. All right, cool. All right, if you have questions other than the pauses, I know that there's been a lot of really good documentation going on Slack. Please feel free to use that. Also, if there's something that you notice during the session or afterwards where you have a question or you want to reach out, please feel free to reach out to me on Slack or throw something out on Twitter or whatever, just kind of any way to get that out there, and we'll definitely get information back to you. Let me go back to the previous slide. There is a web URL. There's some resources and there's some videos. There are some of the ones that are related to the session, but also if there's any questions that come up during the session or afterwards that are relevant, I'm just going to add it to that post. So we'll just use that as kind of a living document, or anything that's on there can be thrown in the Google Doc or whatever you want to do. Cool. I think there's a clicker here somewhere. It's pretty amazing. I've got my wand, but let's see how this works. Yeah, I'm going to tap. All right. So spectrum analysis. So what we're really going to do is we're going to talk about spectrum analysis. And we're going to look at that. We're going to talk about why that's helpful. We're going to look at one particular device that does that, and I think it does it pretty well. We're going to do a live demo, and I've got some help for that, a couple live demos. And then I've got some interesting examples, because basically this is my new nerdy hobby, and I take this thing everywhere now, and I'm not afraid to pull it out on the plane or, at the airport or malls, banks, just wherever. It might be interesting. So that being said, let's get to the other topic of this. And I know it's a small group, so I really want to make sure that what we talk about in this next little bit here stays in the room. Can't go out and share this. It's nothing bad, but if it got out, there might be consequences, and I don't want to bring that back. As a non-magical person myself, but I watch other magical people, and I try to learn a little bit, and I don't know that I'll be getting, I'm pretty sure there'll be a pretty hefty bill from my hotel room, because fire and magical damage isn't good, but it wasn't all me. I've got proof that it exists, but it's all real. That's the secret. The historical documents by J.K. Rowling, we think of them as fantasy and fiction. No, not at all. It's real. We classify it as that, and that's the ruse that's been pulled over, the wool that's been pulled over our eyes for I don't know how long. I just discovered this. And, it's all of it, wizards, magical creatures. And I know some of you out there are going, yes, I knew it. I knew it, right? And some of you are going, what? This guy's crazy. And that may be true, too. Or use it legends way too long at lunch. But I first learned about magic by studying the effects of it, observing the effects of it. And where does bizarre and unusual effects usually come to our attention in the tech industry? Help desk ticket, right? Somebody's like, oh, it's not working. I'm like, and the network guy's like, no, man, it's all configured correctly. It works. And MDM and the Mac guy. No, man, it's all configured correctly. It works, but then the ticket's still there. Reopen, closed, reopen, closed, reopen, closed. What do? Sometimes you got to actually go out and check it out, right? And then it freaks them out because like they're like, whoa, who are you? And you're pale, and there's sun, and you know, and it's better for your health and vitamin D if you get a little bit of sunlight. And so I do recommend it, but it is all real. And today I'm going to show you how you can see it too. Now, how many of you are staying in the hotel here? Okay, how many of you had a great Wi-Fi experience upstairs in your room? And just, you know, if anybody from the hotel is looking, it's great. Everybody raised their hand that had a great experience. And downstairs too, right? Well, nothing against the people that set up the network and all that, because there is interference that they can't see. And I was fortunate enough to record it. So this is an example of magical energy in the hall. And you can see it. It's just floating out there, and it just absorbs Wi-Fi. I mean, it kills it. And I mean, if you don't have a crystal ball, or, you know, don't know a gazing spell, then, you know, it's going to be difficult to try to find that. But it's obviously there. And look, even downstairs. You know, I don't know if this is graffiti, if people are magically tagging, you know, if they're just, you know, writing PSU, Mac, which it's a nice shout out, by the way. And after this session, you might go down there and see if you can figure out a way. You may be able to find the same spell that I did on Google, but if you cast that spell down there, you may be able to see the same graffiti. And then that's up on the 5th floor. I made the mistake of trying to go to my room on the 4th floor, and it didn't work really well. It was awkward, but it wasn't terrible. I didn't get in. But on the 5th floor, which is where my room is, it worked. I do want to call your attention to Slack. So when we look at this part of the MacAdmins Slack, when we look at it, we see Wi-Fi. And I'm on it all the time. And I'm here to tell you that that's not what that word really is. If you reveal the word, it's really wizardry. How many of you are pretty good with Wi-Fi, or you know a thing or two about it, or you use it? A couple of you? How many of you, you know, Wi-Fi is that other guy's job. You don't know much about it. Okay, and that's okay. And there's life without knowing Wi-Fi. Kind of the goal today is to get you enough to know that when you get that call, to think outside the box. Think, okay, this may be, you know, this type of issue, or maybe this type of issue, or maybe magic. I do want to give a shout out to some wizards that have helped me along the way, have taught me a lot, have helped me actually solve problems as I'm chasing this rabbit down the rabbit hole. But there's several people. It takes a village to raise an idiot, and this is my village, and I'm very appreciative of the people there. And the nice thing about our community is that you can reach out, you can lurk. I recommend lurking. You can ask questions, and nobody's openly laughed at me for asking questions. And then I've had some people that have actually provided some very real, very practical, and very helpful advice when I was working with user issues. And a couple of folks, Steve and Chris, are actually here today, and they're going to help bring in equipment and help kind of set up some cool, fun stuff for the live demo. So let's talk about some stuff, and then we'll have some questions. So Wi-Fi really functions on 2 layers, and you could say they're the 2 dumbest layers if you're not very respectful, so we won't say that. But there's a model for networking, and kind of the way they categorize different types of technical layers to a networking model. You know, we need models. It helps us understand things. And so the OSI model is the one that's kind of adopted for networking. And Wi-Fi only operates on the bottom 2 layers. It operates on the data link layer, and it operates on the physical layer. Okay, so the data link layer is going to be like your MAC addresses. It's going to be logical link control. When you fire up Wireshark, when you're looking at retransmissions, things like that, you're looking at the data link layer. And a lot of us look at that. And when we do troubleshooting, we may fire up you know, the cloud, whatever cloud control we have over Meraki or an Arrowhive solution, or it may be a controller or whatever, and you may do some packet captures or whatever. You're all on the data link layer for that. When network's not working on a computer, like a desktop, what's one of the first things you check? Yeah, is it plugged in? Well, how do we do that for wireless? What's the physical layer for wireless? The air, right? So I want you to grab the wireless that's in the air.
You can feel it.
I feel it. Can you feel it?
Yeah,
I'm feeling it.
5 gigahertz, right?
You got 5 gigs? Some of you may be grabbing 2.4? I wouldn't say that. You know, maybe chronologically challenged or chronologically...
Experience.
Yes, yes. But I too remember, let's just say that I remember banging around on TRS-80 Model 3. So it was good times. But the physical layer, so Wi-Fi, the physical medium is the air. And what shares the air?
Everything.
A lot of stuff, right? A whole lot of stuff. And a lot of that stuff can affect Wi-Fi. Also, the medium that Wi-Fi uses is unlicensed space. So 2.4 and 5 gigahertz are these very narrow bands because we've got big bands for radio and television and other stuff. We've got these little narrow bands of spectrum, of the wireless spectrum that we can use to transmit everything, literally everything. I mean, I saw, what was it? It was something dumb the other day, another smart device that you don't even have to, I mean, how many of you have like the IoT things in your house where basically we don't want to get up out of the chair so we can figure everything from our phone and it pops popcorn and serves it to us and all that kind of good stuff. Which, by the way, is great for people who have accessibility needs because basically our laziness is independence for them. So that's a good thing. But it all basically becomes crowded, and so we're going to take a look at some of that. A couple of concepts to get into. I'm just going to hit some highlights. We're not going to dive deep because if we dive deep, I'm probably going to just pitch to some of the wizards that are hiding in the audience. But one thing to know about is frequency. So frequency is how often you return to this conference. So how many of you have been here more than once? How many of you this is the first time? Okay. We got some that's more than once. Anybody been here like, I don't know, more than 5 years? Okay, all right. Those are the people that ask for advice. So frequency talks about how quickly the wave oscillates, how fast it goes up and down. It's very similar to how a sound wave changes pitch. So a lower frequency sound wave is going to be a lower sound, but a higher frequency sound wave is going to be a little bit higher register. And so how many of you remember Winamp from back in the day? Okay, you just dated yourself too. And I know y'all were on Napster like me. So basically Winamp was a visualization tool for audio to where the bass, all about that bass was on the left-hand side as you're facing it, and yeah, I got this correct, okay. And the high frequencies were on the right. And so if you want more treble, you raise the high, and if you want more bass, you drop it and raise the bottom. And Wi-Fi is the same way. So even within the 2.4 and the 5 gigahertz, the frequencies, there is some variation in that. So where do we get 2.4? What does that come from? How do they come up with that number? I mean, it's friendly. It's 2 and 4, and those are friendly numbers. And you put a dot between them. 2.4 refers to, so basically they look at how fast the wave oscillates within 1 second. So that wave will go up and down for one wavelength for 2,400 times, hence 2.4 gigahertz. So where does the 5 come from in the 5 gigahertz range with that logic? 5,000, right? Oh, by the way, somebody said 5,000. So that's correct, yes, absolutely. So 5,000 times. And so within that 5 gigahertz range, we have different channels scattered along that, and there's small increases in 5,000 plus whatever within that range. Not that you'll ever need to know that. But if you want to be a self-made isolate, so whenever there's another social, just get together, start talking about that, and people's eyes will glaze over and they'll leave. All right. We need to talk about full duplex. And I know full duplex was on the top of your list to learn when you came here today, so we're going to learn about it. There's nothing that excites me more than full duplex, except maybe half duplex, but we'll get into that. And the way we're going to illustrate that is a wizard battle, okay? So Ethernet cables, your wired network, supports full duplex transmissions. And what that means is it can send traffic bidirectionally. That means two ways. On the same cable at the same time. So the way that would work then is, see if this will go. Yeah, so it's at the same time. See, isn't that cool? Like, pow. Oh, that's half duplex. So the difference between full duplex and half duplex is half duplex, instead of sending it two at one time, half duplex sends how many? One at a time, right? So you go first. No, I'll go. No, you'll go. No, I'll go. No, after you. So it just kind of goes back and forth like that. So wireless works on half duplex. We've got to wait. It's like having a conversation where everybody doesn't speak over everybody at once. Now, what happens if somebody from, let's say, Texas has a conversation with somebody from Jersey? The data rates are different, right? Or they can potentially be. Because in the South, we tell you what we're going to talk about. We talk about it. We talk about what we talked about, and then we ask you what you think about what we talked about, and then it's your turn because we go real slow. So Wi-Fi devices, they can transmit at a variety of different data rates, different megabits per second. The advantage of slower data rates is that they're robust over smaller signal strengths. Faster rates are, they require a better signal strength, slightly more power. If a device doesn't understand the information that it received, then it will retry, and it'll often retry at a slower rate. So if we look at that, it's like the same wizard battle, but we keep going a little slower. So that's half duplex. And that's why you want to make sure that none of your students have their parents' old iPhone 5s. They all want to upgrade to the iPhone 10, and they want to pay full price for it, and Apple is appreciative of that. Another thing to think about is noise, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make some noise. We're going to look at some noise here. Signal to noise ratio. So to communicate, wireless devices need to be able to hear each other. The better they can hear each other, the faster they're going to be able to send that data back and forth, which means that signal strength is important. Now it doesn't just have to be loud, but they also have to be able to talk to each other. So if I'm screaming at you and you're just talking, that's not really communicating. Also, if there's a lot of noise, like if you're trying to have a conversation in a very crowded room and there's all this noise going on, it's really difficult. And the same is true for Wi-Fi. So signal strength isn't the only measurement of transmission quality. You want a significant amount of space between the signal strength and the noise floor. And there's always noise, at least based on what I've been able to see, there's always noise wherever you go. And some places are noisier than others. So let's think about Wi-Fi. So this is taken from my commute in Austin. It takes me an hour and a half to go 15 miles. No, this isn't my, well, actually it is a picture of Austin. But so Wi-Fi works off of the principle of collision avoidance. Unlike Ethernet, networks which work off of the principle of collision detection. So if you think about that, if you think about traffic, so we're going down the road and we're in our lanes. And during rush hour, if everybody does pretty much what they're supposed to do, we're going to get to where we're going. It might be slower, but we know we're all going to get through. Now, collision detection means that you're not paying attention until you hit a car, and then you might back off the gas. Collision avoidance means you see that someone up ahead of you is acting a fool, and they're driving all over the road kind of crazy, and so you might back off a little bit and not transmit. So kind of the way this works with Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi listens to tell if anybody's broadcasting, or anybody's broadcasting 802.11 Wi-Fi traffic. There may be noise there, but if in the act of listening, the Wi-Fi doesn't understand what it hears, it'll assume that the airspace is free, and it'll try to transmit. If there is non-Wi-Fi based noise in there, particularly significant noise, it will collide with that noise, and the intended receiver never receives the frame, never receives the Wi-Fi packet, or they may receive part of it. And so then it'll retry the frame, and it kind of cascades. It kind of creates an increasing problem, and it tries and tries again. So it's kind of like, you know, you've got your orderly traffic in the morning, but what would happen if all of a sudden just a herd of these huge magical creatures just ran out in front of your car? It would be tough. In Texas, we call those magical creatures feral hogs. Up north, I hear they're moose. But they cause a lot of problems. And the problem with magical creatures is we can't see them. All of a sudden, we're in a wreck, because every time I drive by, it's nobody's fault. It just happens. So, so what are some of these sources of non-802.11 RF interference? So if you had that same gazing spell like I had earlier, you would see that these are typical sources of non-802.11 interference. When these guys are walking around, your Wi-Fi's crapping out. It's not working very well. But what do these guys look like? What does this look like in the real world? Because they don't want us to see them. So instead, they disguise themselves. It could be industrial control equipment, which is either talking to other industrial control equipment on some kind of crazy, I don't know what, that's interfering with whatever, and it doesn't care about your Wi-Fi traffic. It could be a Philips Hue light bulb. It could be an Xbox. Xbox is interesting to observe if you ever watch it. You have to put the controller down and actually look at the spectrum analyzer to properly observe it, but that is possible. Baby monitors, which we're going to be able to sample here today. Also, other sources are 2.4 gigahertz phones, which thankfully we don't use much anymore. Walkie-talkies, IoT devices, Nest anything, and of course weather radar and radar towers, which those are particularly fun, especially when you don't know if they're around or not. So that's kind of what we're looking at. I want to kind of pause and see if anybody has any questions about the content that we've got so far. And I don't know if you do. Does anybody have any questions about what we went over? It's kind of basic, kind of high level. Was it painful? Good. That's the whole point. That's why you come to a session like this, right? So what we need is we need some sort of magic pensieve or cauldron or something so we can gaze into the Wi-Fi space and see what's going on. If you've ever fired up Wireshark, it's not exciting, unless you really like that sort of thing. And if you do, it's very exciting, and I apologize for saying that. But you may feel the same way about this. However, I think gazing into the pensieve is very exciting. And so we have one. And the one I use is the Ekahau Sidekick. And what the Sidekick is, it's this guy right here. It's a portable spectrum analyzer. And so this is hardware that you pair with software to go into a building, or some people take them outside, into a building and look at the wireless traffic. Ekahau has a lot of some pretty good site survey equipment, which will allow you to import maps. You can place your access points and all that on there. Unlike predictive heat map software, which is what most of your controllers have, and a lot of your vendors will do a predictive heat map prior to an installation. What a site survey does is it actually, because the model is not always what happens in reality. So a site survey, and I really recommend that you either do this yourself if you have the training and the knowledge, or you pay for someone to do that. Because what you'll find is that in your environments, there are differences between what the installer said they were going to do as far as placement of the APs and what the thicknesses of the walls. It never translates 100%. The other thing I've noticed is that in the heat maps, they place those APs in the perfect spot, and that has nothing to do with the team that comes in and actually sticks them up in the ceiling, because they could be anywhere. So your map is only as good as the data you feed it. However, when you have something like this, you strap it to your hip, you walk around your building, and you have those same maps, and you actually locate where the AP is. It'll triangulate with it, and it'll actually, it knows, it kind of geolocates, so it knows where you're going around, and it'll actually take a pretty accurate survey. Now, I use this for troubleshooting, so you don't have to use the site survey part with it, and we're going to do a test drive here in a minute. But I use this whenever I get those support tickets that have gone through, all the help desk people, my team of techs, the network guy scratching his head, and somebody just needs to go in. Now, the beauty of having something like this is it has a high placebo effect for your users. Because if you can have something cool to go into the room and have some really great graphs on your screen, that ticket's going to go away most of the time. Every now and then you find something really weird, and with Wi-Fi, really weird means something that interferes with communication, and you have two choices: shoot it or run. No, you can either remove it or you can work around it. And depending on what it is, if it's a teacher, you know, whose AirPlay drops when she's, did you hear that? There's something in that box. So whenever someone's AirPlay drops, that's weird. Okay, whenever someone's AirPlay drops and their microwave's going off, then, you know, the choice you have is like, okay, well, maybe when you pop your popcorn, maybe your microwave should be in another part of the room, or, you know, maybe you should switch it to where it's not an ad hoc mode, so it's not just using Bluetooth to find itself, or just different things like that. So you can mitigate around it. All right. So there's something in here. Hang on. Oh. Well, there you are. Yeah. No, I know you're shy. Yeah, they want to meet you there. Are you guys nice? Are y'all friendly?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, they're friendly. Okay. Well, I want to show you the canary in the coal mine for me. The little guy that has, and it could be a guy, I don't know, it's gender neutral. I think are you gender neutral? Oh, I'm so sorry. So the one thing that has really just thrown me down this rabbit hole has been this little magical mystical creature, and it was kind enough to come with me on the plane, and I didn't even have problems going through TSA or anything. I just strapped it to the front of my head, and they let me right through, which was kind of weird. But you want to meet him? Okay. This is my little buddy. I have 640 of these in my district. Yes, I do, but you're special to me. Yes, you are. Okay, all right, I know you. So I have 640 of these in my district. If there's a kindergartner with some kind of display walking around in his or her backpack, we're strapping an Apple TV on it. So the nice thing is that my teachers use AirPlay. They use it 8 hours a day, every day, and instead of stopping AirPlay, they freeze the screen on their projector and work, so the kids can't necessarily see what they're doing because maybe they're reading their email or something, but they're still mirroring the whole time. And you do a great job. Yes, you do. They do. You do. They do such a great job that when AirPlay drops so seldom that when it drops, yeah, I know. I've told you about the tickets that I had. That's why I brought that out when you were being, well, it may not have been you. But it drops so seldom that I actually go out and check it out because it spooks them. It's like, it dropped. I had to mirror my screen again. I'm like, okay, how often does that happen? Well, it happened last week too. Okay. Yeah, no, tell me about it. We'll look. And so there are some caveats with these, especially when you get them in a herd like we have. They do have some behaviors. Some of them like to be a little bit different than the group, but by and large, in ad hoc mode, sending, and you do give off a lot of bonjour. Yes, you do. And it's not, I love you, but it's not pretty. I like to send bonjour into, that just goes straight to the Dark Lord. I don't want to have anything to do with bonjour. I mean, we just get rid of it. And life is better without bonjour. In fact, if you didn't have bonjour, I would still love you just as much, and probably a little more. It's judgmental, but I would. And these things have low power Bluetooth. So you'd think 640 devices would be Bluetooth MacAdmin. Plus, all of our secondary students have Bluetooth keyboards on their iPads. We're one-to-one, of course. And, you know, everybody's hopping on and off the Wi-Fi. And like many of you, YouTube is our primary service that we provide the district. And for the most part, instructionally, things work really, really well. I do love my Aruba. We work with Aruba, and we do have Dell networking, and you're good too. But ad hoc mode has been interesting, and we've got some observations of this little guy. I'm going to put you back in your box now, okay? Okay, cool. I thought you'd feel better. It's a little introverted. So, and you wouldn't think that because they're such a ham with the media. All right, so let's have some fun. You want to have some fun? I want to have some fun. We've got 15 minutes left. I'm lying. Okay, so let's look at, I'm going to exit out of this, and let's actually look at, it's plugged in. Oh, I got the spinning wheel. I hope not, but spinning wheel of patience.
You know, there are some gorgeous pictures of the snow in the Sahara for the last 2 winters. Just saying, if you like desert photos, that's a little odd. They look something like that with white all over.
Yeah, I like desert photos, but I also like the mountains. You know, so.
I assume this is from the new OS.
I would not, I think it's like Fight Club. First rule of that is.
Who would do that right before a conference, putting a better operating system on their laptop?
Nobody's sane. Nobody sane would do that. And they wouldn't put it on their phone or their iPad either.
So is that the unicorn?
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. Okay, so let's look at basically the software. Oh, that's good. That's good. Let's mirror. That's why you're saying that. You know, my view's much different. So the nice thing about this is it's recorded, so this is public. So that's good. That's good. Sorry, mothership. Okay, so let's look at Ekahau's site survey software. And so the site survey software is the software that you use to run. Oh, this is the other Wizards tool. So Paul gave this to me, and it's pretty cool, and I'm probably going to spend too many hours trying to figure out how to get that out. All right, so the Ekahau, the hardware is almost like you can actually associate the key with the hardware, so you can trade it off between different devices, which is nice. The Ekahau is the only, Sidekick is the only external Wi-Fi device from this company that is supported with this software on the Mac platform. If you wanted to use other wireless adapters, you would have to use that other platform of which we don't speak. And I'm not talking about Linux, as we'll speak about that. But that being said, it works fine. It's full-featured on both platforms. It's not neutered at all. The site survey software is where you would import your maps and things like that. This is a fresh install, so I don't have any maps on it. But I'm going to go down, right down to the corner here, and I'm going to pop up the Spectrum Analyzer. Now, we'll do a little tour of this. The cool thing, kind of what we're seeing here, is we're seeing right now the 2.4 gigahertz spectrum. And so we see a lot of things with this. On the left-hand side, we've got what's called the waterfall view. So as it's coming down, you can see different colors. And so, you know, the colors range in intensity from green to yellow to red to blue to black, with black being the highest level of energy. So this is actively measuring radio energy in this room at this time. And so you can see that there's kind of clusters, and you see also these little like tables or these little kind of mesas. Those are channels, and so the Wi-Fi spectrum, because we actually carve up sections of that spectrum to transmit on, and when we're playing nice, we share those channels and transmit specifically on those sections. Now you're going to see in here that there's some activity that doesn't really conform to those shapes. That's kind of one of the things that we're looking for. The other thing that you can see in the software is, and so we've got these, these little mesas right here. The taller they are, the more the antenna is perceiving the power of that. Now, a lot of times proximity has a lot to do with that, so that if something is on the other side of the building, it may pick it up, but it's going to be a lot lower in energy. So basically, on the vertical column, you've got the power, and power in Wi-Fi is actually kind of inversely measured because it always starts in the negative. You go with 0 and you go down from there. And as you go down, I forgot the increments, but basically it's almost logarithmic the way the power decreases as you go down. So -12, as just a random example that might be relevant later, is a whole lot more powerful than -90. Now, on the web page that I shared with you, there's some links to some resources for recommendations for how to tune your Wi-Fi for Apple devices. Ekahau also has a pretty good webinar on doing that for education, or there's consultants in this very room that could help you with that as well. The other things that we can look at here, we can change the duration of the sampling. So right now I've got it on 5 seconds, and it's kind of a historical view. If I want to speed that up, and sometimes that's advantageous if you're trying to look at quick bursts of traffic, I can do that. Or if I want to see trends, so maybe there's something so fast I can't see it, so I want to do a longer, kind of a longer trend of that, I can change those time intervals there. I'm going to go back to 5. The other thing that I can do is I can show the APs or not. It's typically better for me if I see the access points. I have 3 different views here. I've got max density, which is kind of that historical view in a sense. I've got no density, which that shows you the energy as it's happening immediately. It's very quick. It's very sudden. You may see some spikes in here coming up, and we'll talk about those in a bit. But you can see it's a very dynamic medium with the way it transmits. And then there's point density. So you can kind of see noise and trash that kind of floats out there. You can see where things have been, but you can also see energy spikes as they happen. So you have the ability to do that. You have the ability to look at real-time sweep, maximum sweeps, or average sweeps. I typically keep these settings right here, but I will vacillate between 5 seconds and 1 second. The other things that you can change is on the lower part of the screen, you can actually change to the waterfall view, which is just like what's in the left-hand side, but it's wider. You can look at the timeline, which is what we were looking at. So you've got all the signals, and you kind of see how they fluctuate there. And then you've got a little bit of a kind of the activity going. It's almost like waterfall on the side. You can look at the radios, and if there's any MAC addresses in here, be sure to write those down and publish those, like that one. But you can kind of see what radios are being used. You can see what SSIDs are associated with that radio. So it's kind of nice how it condenses that view. And if you just hover over it, like this one, this access point, it should pop up with some information. It did it. And there we go. So I can tell that they're using Aruba. Kudos to them. Not that I'm prejudiced. I can see the SSIDs on there. I can see the different broadcasts on there, the supported data rates that are on there, the max data rate, the number of streams, and the MAC addresses of each radio. And so that's pretty helpful. And then I can look at the channels. And one of the things that you really want to look at is channel utilization. And generally it's nice if that's 30 or below. I've seen a lot of traffic going on in rooms and it doesn't necessarily hit that. We're going to blow it out of the water here in a little bit. And then you also have the 5 gigahertz spectrum, which is where we live on right now. So let's do a little test. I've got it on the slides, but if you would, on whatever device you're on, just for giggles, let's go to speedtest.net and don't hit start. We'll start all at the same time. We're going to go to speedtest.net, and I want to see if we can light it up. And you're going to see an increase of traffic just because we're getting on the internet. Are we all there pretty much? All right, go ahead and run it. I've never done this before with the group, so I'm just curious. So you can see how that on this particular AP right here, you can see how the energy it's going kind of off the charts there. I said off the charts except for what we're going to do here in a minute. So that's what Dean's Hall 1 and 2 look like during a presentation on any given time of the day. But so I had this fired up during your presentation, and that's what it.
Getting slow.
Yeah, it was getting slower. So that's like a crowded highway. Okay, so you still got traffic. It's still going through, but you don't have anything that's messing with it terribly. Any questions about that? Yeah, you can do the catch box because they can't record you unless. All right, let's see if we can do this.
What do you mean by channel utilization?
Okay, very good. So each one of these little shapes, these little, and I've got actually a slide on channels. Let's look at that. I got $5 for you later. Thank you. So basically, they have to carve up. The spectrum's continuous, right? But we have to make logical divisions of that spectrum to make for the variations in the wave. And so those are generally carved up in units of about 20 megahertz. Now, to get more data through, just like we would with a network switch, we can bond those channels together. So you can take two 10 gig Ethernet DACs and bond them to a 20, or you could take 4 and bond them to a 40, which was, I think, what we could do with 802.11n. Is that right? And then with AC, we can do 80 and 160. I'm getting nods, so that's good. So basically, if I have an environment where, and I want the APs to be on, I'm going to have to speed up here, I want them to be on several different channels. But because if you can see from this is the 5 gigahertz range, more or less. And where you see Uni 2 and Uni 2 extended, some of that may or may not be available depending upon proximity to weather radar or other sources of radar traffic that these APs will listen to and knock you off because they're supposed to. They're designed that way so they don't interfere with radar. So you have a limited band to do that. So imagine in this room, if we're in this conference center, if we're broadcasting at 80 megahertz, we've only got a potential of 6 different channels, more or less, that we can have those APs on. We don't want channels to overlap because that will cause interference, and you'll have problems with the signals getting through. So when we talk about channel utilization, I've got an AP here that's on channel, let's say 140, and I've got some APs around me that aren't. But then there's one that's kind of close by that's on 140. I can have high channel utilization, and if I'm wrong, we'll post this in Slack. But you can have high channel utilization either from all of us in here using that same AP a lot and just overtaxing it, or if I've got APs that are nearby using the same channel so that basically I've got a lot of traffic in that airspace. So channel utilization is how much of that available airspace is being used. And I think around 30-ish is kind of a sweet spot.
Is 30, are you talking a percentage?
Percentage, yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Good question. Yeah, so that's a percentage. All right, let's do a demo. So Let's do some fun stuff. All right, so let me get this off. Oh, I'm gonna drop this little guy. I did drop him. I'm so sorry. I dropped my bow truckle. Don't upset your bow truckle. Okay, so let's do a test. So we're gonna do a test on 2.4, and we're gonna do it with a baby monitor. So my children are 21 and 26, so I haven't used one of these ever because they grew up in a time when we didn't really care about children. And, okay, let me turn this off. Okay. All right, so this is a 2.4 gig spectrum. This is very similar to the microwave, which if you go to the webpage, there is a video of what a microwave does. And Chris Daw was telling me that he has actually seen microwave plus baby monitor disrupting Netflix and causing discontent.
Oh, no.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to turn it on, and I've just got one half of it on. I've just got the camera.
That's why you need an access point in every room of the house.
Yes, don't we? What do you notice? It's starting to light up, isn't it? And you notice how it's broadcasting, and it's not necessarily in the channels. It's not AP traffic. It's non-802.11 traffic. It's just sending it out there. All right.
Spectrum spreading or something?
It doesn't care. It's on a completely different protocol in that same space. Echo, echo, echo. All right. So now it's really lighting up. Now, pop popcorn, and you're going to double or triple that, and then if you have anything on 2.4, it's going to completely drop out. Or it's going to fight. It's going to fight for survival. You know, and whatever's fittest is going to survive. It may be Wi-Fi. Hopefully it's the baby monitor. I mean, because children are important. I've learned that since I had my kids. And it was good to learn. They're not recyclable. And they're our future. I just keep telling myself that. So, all right, I'm going to turn it off.
The microwave oven will not lose.
All right. So there's still some residual. Let me turn it down to 1 second. All right. Let's go back. Now, when we compare that to a microwave. Is it running? Uh-oh. A safe Mac is a happy Mac. This is not a happy Mac. Let's try it again. I guess there is a memory limit to these. All right, let's move on to the next test. Okay, so Steve's going to help me, but we're going to look at disrupting the 5 gigahertz spectrum. And what we have is basically a point-to-point bridge. So we're going to shoot a beam, and I think you'll be fine. You might want to move your Mac.
Strangely warm.
Yeah, I'm not, you know, PSU is not responsible for any injuries that happen as a result of my antics. So we're going to go on the 5 gigahertz spectrum, and we're looking at our data. I'm going to put this guy right in between. It could be a gal. It's fine, too. And, okay, you got it? All right, he's going to fire it up.
Can you send video over or something?
Nope.
Hyper test. It'll just run TCP packets as fast as the network can.
So in case that didn't get captured, what we're running is called an iPerf test. So it measures, it helps you to measure throughput of a connection, particularly a wireless connection, well, I guess you can use for regular network too, but it basically just sends a flood of packets from one point to another. In this case, we're sending the packets from here over to the receiver. Now, one of the things that you may notice is that that channel is significantly wider than the other channels that we're broadcasting on currently. So that's actually 80 megahertz, and so it's 4 of the 20 megahertz channels bonded together. And the interesting thing about this spectrum analyzer is that you can see the differences in those channels. I've got another video from Ekahau that shows a 4x4 radio client downloading a 300 megabyte file, which is about the same size that we're sending, and it's very similar. The other thing that's interesting about this is you'll see a lot of Wi-Fi signals at, what am I at? I'm at negative 44, negative 20, somewhere around there, and that's pretty good. When we push these from point to point, we were getting speeds of negative 10 and negative 12, which is kind of like nuclear. So my memory has not been as good since we did that test earlier, but I don't know that there's any published ill effects from doing that, although I did have it on either side of my head. So that's interesting. And now he's stopped the test. And can you trigger it again? You see there's nothing there. And then this is just, and boom, there it is. I needed the song for that. But the other thing that you notice on here, and it samples very fast, you see all the little blue spikes. You see all the noise and the little trash that's going on in there. That's what my understanding is, that's the noise floor. That's just the junk that's going on in the airspace as we're watching it. And you also notice on the waterfall view, let me get back over here. See how it's lit up red? And you can see discreetly where he starts and stops the broadcast. Now, if we're looking for and this protocol isn't 802.11. Well, it's 802.11.
Well, so these two point-to-point links have a proprietary option on them that's not 802.11 standard, yet they are showing up in Wi-Fi Explorer, so I'm a little fuzzy exactly what they're doing.
So they're somewhat 802.11, kind of, sort of, because for every absolute, there's all the things that aren't absolute. But we didn't know that until we fired this up. That's the interesting thing about spectrum analysis, is that I'll see things that I didn't know were there. All right, I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this. And let me show you a couple things in the presentation. All right, time is winding down. Let me see if I can open this back up. Here we go. All right, I'm going to close it. I guess it was too much even for the MacBook Pro, excuse me. All right, so let's get cooking. All right, here's a microwave.
Yeah,
Maybe.
a little higher frequency on the top.
2.4, yep, it's not working. Let's exit. Let's see. Well, it wouldn't be as good without technical difficulties. This will load. Okay. Well, let's talk about some other tools that you can use. I had these in slides, and we're starting to get toward the end of the session. I want to leave some time for Q&A. So what do you do if you don't have a spectrum analyzer, and you still need to go out and you need to help clients in the field? And there's a couple of things that have been helpful. I like to go out and gather information as quickly as possible, and so that if I do have to follow up, so if I'm going to go out on a call, I'm going to start gathering logs, I'm going to start gathering data, because I don't want to have to come back and get that to support if we have to do a deeper dive. And I never know until I get out there and start working on a problem that that's where I'm going to end up. So on the Mac, one of the set of useful tools, and one of the things I like to use are the Wi-Fi diagnostics. So I'm going to fire that up. Basically you click, and those of you in the Mac, if you hold down Option and click on your screen, you can actually open Wi-Fi wireless diagnostics. Now, it will run a set of diagnostics, and it'll zip them up and create a report for you that you can send to support if you're having problems with the Mac, or if Mac is on one of the receiving ends of the wireless issue, because wireless is always communication between at least two things, right? But some of the other tools that are in here that are useful under Window are the scan. So I can just kind of take a look at what's going on, and it'll take it a second. Now this is a passive scan. So in a passive scan, you don't have a radio that's dedicated to just looking at RF like you do with the spectrum analyzer. So you can't do full spectrum analysis with just the Mac. You have to have that separate antenna. Another one I like to look at is the performance. You can actually do a sniffer. Most of the time I just do this to quickly look and make sure what channel I'm on and what width it is, because it'll just kind of pull it up based on what it thinks it has from the NIC. But I can see the signal and the noise. If you look down to bottom, you can look at the SNR, and basically if those two are close together, then it may not be hearing the Wi-Fi traffic from the noise that's behind it. Those are things I look for. I look for spikes in that. I look for some kind of just aberration, something that's different, something that's odd, something that's out of the ordinary. You can also get the logs, and it'll generate the logs. You can generate Bluetooth logs and send those to support as well. And then, of course, you can pull the GUI back up to help you go through those. All right, another tool that I like that does cost a little bit of money, but I feel validated in recommending this because I've seen other people pull it up, is Wi-Fi Explorer. And Wi-Fi Explorer is really nice because it gives me a lot of data here. I can look at the different SSIDs. I can look at, it shows me the vendor. It gives me the signal strength. It tells me what channel I'm on because it highlights it. I can tell what band I'm on. I can tell the mode, and I can tell the max 600. That's so funny. I can tell the maximum rate that will send, and I can even get the MAC address. So these are all the MAC addresses, the APs in this room. So that's a good thing to do, and those aren't at Penn State. Those are at another college. So this is a useful tool. You can look at signal strength through here. I do like the network details. And Spectrum, even though it's not doing true spectrum analysis, I can kind of see where, the nice thing about this, and I think it actually does a better job of this than the site survey software that we saw earlier, is kind of looking and seeing where the APs are clustered on the channels in a very visual way. It's very easy. I can see it. I don't have to look at a lot of numbers because numbers confuse me. And that's pretty intuitive. And then you can also look at the advanced details and even drill down even deeper on each one of these. And that's a lot of information for not a whole lot of money. It's not like $1,000 or more. It's not at all close to that. It's a pretty good tool. I recommend it. The other tool, and I'm going to pull my presentation back up. Oh, you can even export this. The other tool that I like to use, 14 minutes. See if it'll pull up Keynote. Oh, it's already up. All right. I'm going to close it. I'm going to crash it. All right. We're going to reopen. Ignore. Okay, there's Wi-Fi Explorer. Some of the diagnostics it has. Oh, these are the Apple's Wi-Fi diagnostics. I'll share these links on that web page, and also my slide deck is up. I need to update it. I have used iOS Console from Lemon Jar. If you support iPads at all and you don't have them locked out to where they can't pair with a computer, it's a pretty good utility. You can kind of see stuff as it goes up, and you can look at those logs in the same way that you would console view. Apple support, if you start getting too far down the rabbit hole, they have mobile configs that you can put on these devices that will do more advanced logging and help you gather those logs. Also, if you have access to the developer account, you can go ahead and grab them yourself. So if you do have access to that, first of all, if you're not in Appleseed for IT or you don't have a developer account, I highly recommend that you do so, because you can get some information about what's in the secret sauce before it comes out. And a lot of times their information, the documentation gets better and better each year, and so I've really appreciated the work that's been done on that, and it's been more helpful for me because I'll actually read it. But they have at this URL down at the bottom, which I'll share, they actually have the configuration profiles that you put on the devices to, and the instructions on how to use it to enable the logging. tvOS logs. So the canary in the coal mine for me was an issue that was actually ended up being not related to non-RF interference, but it led me into the journey of interference. So my teachers are complaining about AirPlay dropping. Part of troubleshooting that meant getting logs from Apple TV, and it was happening a lot. It was actually in September of last year. I had drops. We had just refreshed the network, the wireless, new devices for teachers, and Apple TVs in every room, which is insane, but we did it. We have about 10,000 iPads, about 2,500 Macs, and like I said, 640 Apple TVs, give or take. So they're dropping all over the place. So gathering the logs from Apple TV was critical. After hanging it with support from Aruba and from Apple and keep on going, the best thing I could figure out is it actually came down to firmware. So the crack attack was patched on the controllers at the end of last spring. We're talking about spring of 2017, I'm sorry. End of spring of 2017 and into the summer. We had the patches. There was a firmware release on October 31st on the MacBook Air for Sierra. And what I was having up until that point was a lot of drops on the Radius network. WPA2 was working fine. Captive Portal was working fine. Everything but Radius. And then once that firmware update happened, then all those problems went away. The benefit is I was able to start troubleshooting our network, optimizing it, following those guidelines, because some of the things that would exacerbate the problem were if the channels changed, because I'm firing up 640 Apple TVs on channel 149, because that's what AirPlay would broadcast on in ad hoc mode, then my APs would sense it and they would hop to another channel, then my teachers would drop, they couldn't get back on. Any kind of, anything that would interfere, so optimizing the network for user experience and for performance kept the drops from happening less. And one of the things that came into play there was if I found that, it was, there's a lot of noise in an area, or there's too much on one channel, or we need to steer it one way or another, and we just didn't let adaptive radio management do it for us, then there were, in some hot spots we did that. Most of the network, we just let it do what it needs to do. Getting Wi-Fi logs from the Apple TV and getting that to some of those wizards that I put in that first slide to analyze those logs was what was helpful. Another thing that's really helpful is just the airport utility app on your phone for working with your Apple Airport. However, it has a Wi-Fi scanning mode that can actually be exported into Wi-Fi Explorer, the tool I showed you earlier on the Mac. And I don't remember if it's free or if it's a couple bucks. I think it was free. But anyway, the link there will show you how to do it. But it'll at least give you very quickly a look at what SSIDs are being broadcast, what channels they're on, what the signal strength is. It'll give you the MAC address and all that. And it's just right here on your phone. And it's fast, cheap, and easy. So I like my technology to be like I like my food. I like it to be fast, cheap, and easy. So that's definitely one way of doing that. All right. So other than the stuff that we couldn't get to, which is probably good anyway because we just have a few minutes, does anybody have any questions about what they've seen? And you've got the catch box.
I do. What kind of antennas does your toy over there have compared to like what the built-in antenna on the laptops have? Why is a spectrum analyzer different than any other antenna?
Okay. We may be getting a little deeper than my knowledge base, but from what I understand, this is essentially an access point. Okay. If you think about it under the hood, it's going to have multiple antennas. When you're looking at the antenna in a MacBook, there's a card, and there's actually, have you ever taken them apart? Yeah, the wire runs around the screen. A MacBook is capable, it has 2 antennas. I'm looking at my experts.
Yeah, your current USB-C ones are 2x2 radios. Previously, HDMI, 15-inch ones, those had 3x3 radios, and those were 3 transmitter seat chains.
Okay.
3 radios and 1 antenna per radio.
Okay.
So to get that on the recording, so the 15-inch USB-C Macs have a 3x3 radio.
2.
Huh?
The USB-C machines are 2x2s.
2x2s. You want to pitch it over? Thanks. Go ahead and repeat that, Steve.
The USB-C current generation MacBook Pros are going to be 2x2 radios, so 2 transmit radio chains with the early. So that's actually a downgrade from the earlier, like 15-inch, Marco Arment favorite MacBook Pro. If you're a whatever his podcast is,
So
fan.
yours is better than mine.
Yeah, that will, right, that 15 would, that nobody can see me pointing at the YouTube from the future, but will do theoretically faster through that's in front of me.
Okay. And what about the radios that are in an access point or, say, the Sidekick?
Yeah, what was the full question on there? Yeah, here, what, Chris?
We got Chris Daw.
Right? Is it working? So the Sidekick does a couple of things. The Sidekick contains 2 wireless NICs and a spectrum analyzer. And so what the 2 wireless NICs and the Sidekick are there for is to do either, if I understand correctly, because I'm not entirely sure I do, both wireless signal survey, that is RSSI readings, things like that, on more than one channel at a time. And then the spectrum analyzer is there to read raw radio frequency energy that's traveling in both the 2.4 gigahertz and the 5 gigahertz band. So you're able to use the Sidekick both as a site survey device and I believe a capture device, as well as a spectrum analyzer to look at that raw radio energy. Because you're really looking at, when you're doing a lot of Wi-Fi analysis, you're really looking at two things. You're looking at both the Wi-Fi traffic itself, which you really need a Wi-Fi NIC that can interpret the Wi-Fi information, but then you also need a spectrum analyzer that's capturing pure raw RF energy. Yeah, it's kind of the way that I typically analogize the two concepts is if you think of human speech as Wi-Fi communication, then the raw RF is just sound. So Wi-Fi communication is a subset of the category of sound in that analogy. But you need to be able to deal with both in order to get a full picture of what's going on in the Wi-Fi.
That's why those two guys were on that slide.
I don't know how good I am at this,
Hey,
Good throw. So since it has a Wi-Fi card in there on top of the spectrum analysis, can you turn it into an interface to do like one layer up? Like, can you do packet captures on the Wi-Fi with the EGA-HOW?
I think it does do packet capture. Yeah.
Oh, so because that'd be nice. Like, you know, in security, sometimes that we don't worry so much about the interference. We're more interested in the sniffing.
Right. So you'd be looking at the data link
and
layer.
there's very few good Wi-Fi interfaces with drivers that work everywhere that do 2.4 and 5, and that can do multiple channels at once. So that'd be awesome if it does.
Yeah, I'll put reference information in Slack and then on the webpage on that. I think it does. I think I saw that. It's just not something that I'm mostly looking at layer 1, whereas you'd be looking at layer 2.
Cool.
Good question.
Worth throw.
Not really a question, but my understanding is that 802.11.AC is about to be superseded in the not terribly distant future by 802.11ax, I understand, is the next alphabet soup to that we're to be faced with in terms of supporting.
Yes, that's correct. And there are differences. So, and again, Steve and Chris can speak to it with more depth, but basically 802.11ac supports what's called multi-user MIMO. Now, just because the AP supports it doesn't mean that the client necessarily does, but it can do multiple downstreams. 802.11ax can actually support multiple up and downstreams, and it dynamically carves up. So remember how we saw the channels? It will dynamically carve up allocations of space in those channels to support those streams. And I'm looking to double check. You want to pass it?
Ooh, this is a hard one for
But
me.
yes, 802.11ax.
That is an accurate statement, and I also kind of categorize that and just MIMO at its first level, and then multi-user MIMO also as magical, fantastic beasts that are rarely seen actually doing anything useful in the real world.
Yeah, they're mythical.
Yeah, they are largely mythical.
So do you need to rush out today and get the latest and the greatest? Your vendor would say yes, absolutely.
They have sales quotas.
Yes.
Yes.
But marketing claims are not always service level agreements. So
There aren't any 802.11ax Max yet, right?
no, there aren't any 802.11ax Max. And do they support AC?
Oh yeah, AC has been around for a while, and has the .ax even fully gone through standardization yet? I don't think it's like, remember when there were draft N access points for the longest time, when everybody's looking at the future and what it has been, but not everybody signed off on the, this is what the standard is and it's done, and so it's not even a fully done deal yet. It's very future looking to be. There's neat stuff, really mind-blowing technology in .ax, but don't be worried that you don't have it yet.
And I
It's all
think
fine.
that's time. So thank you for coming today. Hopefully you got something out of it. I think a few of us are going to hang out, and I'm actually going to turn this instrument over to more skilled hands to see what they do with it so that I can learn too. So thank you for coming. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And hopefully you were entertained.